Hey guys, Elizabeth Quinn here again with Elizabeth's Scenes and Scents. Welcome back to my channel. Please don't forget to check out my website, which is waftingwonderfulwax.scentsy.us, where I am Liz Quinn, your lead Scentsy consultant. So today I have for you what I'm calling my Christmas Nostalgia Melting Basket for December. And I have more things than I could fit in my box from all of the most wonderful scents that Scentsy has made that remind me of different memories over the years, or they're just plain good Christmas smells. So let's dive right in. First, I've actually got some bricks to talk about. So one of the things that I loved as a teenager was going to Bath and Body Works. And then in my early 20s, I got married quite young. My husband and we would get a candle or maybe some Yankee tarts, and I would melt or burn those in our apartment. And then we moved into the house that we are currently in, and we've been here for quite a long time. And one of the smells that I just loved was chestnut anything. They had a clove and chestnut candle that is to this day one of my absolute favorites. Now, Scentsy doesn't make something quite like that, but this year they made me a very happy girl by bringing out caramel chestnut in a brick, and I also put it in a bar in my club. This scent is the scent of comfort and holiday goodwill. It's warm and it's rich and it's roasty and toasty like chestnut and caramel, obviously. It is mellow. It is so good. I used to go to Dickens festivals in Holly, Michigan, not that far from where we are, and you would actually get the roasted chestnuts in like a little paper cone given to you over the fire by the guy who was dressed up like Bob Cratchit. It was the best. So this is one of those bars, or brick in this case, that really, really goes straight to my heart with the scent of chestnuts for Christmas. Another one is one of the closest dupes that Scentsy has ever made to a fabulous holiday Bath & Body Works candle, and that is your Crimson Berry Christmas. It smells so much like 'Tis the Season. So many people have gotten excited when they smelled this a couple years ago when it was in our not Scents of the Season, but our brick seasonal collection for the holidays. This is so good. So it's like take 'Tis the Season, which is the best apple punch, beautiful, Christmassy smell that I usually would only do like the last week before Christmas when I saved my candles, very much like I do now, but it's more complicated with the melts. I would kind of prioritize, and we're going to do it here. We're going to count down to my absolute favorites that I usually save for very close to Christmas to melting. I would do the same thing with my candles, and 'Tis the Season was always like the week of Christmas. So this as a brick, I don't necessarily prioritize it for only the week of Christmas because I like it that much that I would like to melt it more. And it's a little bit different than candles. With candles, you kind of got to get through it once you get it started. So you would be living with it for a week with the belts, which is why Scentsy is so amazing. You can swap it out once a day, twice a day, once a week, however you want to do it. Anyway, so this Crimson Berry Christmas goes straight to my heart, reminds me of those early days of being married, and it is such a cozy, rich, truly Christmas party or family over for Christmas Eve, holiday-worthy scent. Some of you, I think, in another region even have this in your Scents of the Season, so let me know what you are thinking about this amazing smell. And then the last one, which is much closer to Yankee candles, is, and you hear me talk about this all the time, but Sweet Orange Pomander. This is all the good Christmas spices plus some dried orange peel in a brick. Oh, it's so good. And Yankee used to make and may still make Home for the Holidays, which is a candle. Oh man, I was introduced to it, I think in my late teens or early 20s, and I used to burn a huge jar candle of that every Christmas. That one was just such an absolute favorite of mine. It has these complex smells, very much like this, but add a little bit of greenery to it. Scentsy has not figured out the perfect dupe for Home for the Holidays yet, but this is close, and that is why it is very close to my heart. So then we go into sort of like the spice zone, and I'm going to go just into the bars now. I have a whole melting basket box like I always do, plus I've got some extra bars here because there was just too much good stuff to talk about. So spices and baking, those just go hand in hand for good Christmas memories for me. My mother had this wonderful old Betty Crocker cookbook, and the craziest thing about that was that on the back cover was the made-up picture of Betty Crocker, and it looked, I am not kidding, so much like my mother's high school graduation picture with the way the hair was done and the shape of the face. I was almost convinced as a little kid that she wrote the cookbook and then just changed her name. So there was this page where you could do gingerbread men. And my mom is one of those people who is a good cook, but she's not much of a baker. So we would every year brainstorm, and we would make these different cookies, and they would never turn out like the picture, and I'd be bummed. But, it was a sweet memory in the end. So I have several like baked goods scents that kind of celebrate that. So Cozy Spice is one of them. This was originally in the Cozy collection for Christmas instead of the scents of the season. At one point they did like a Hygge collection, and then they also did this Cozy collection, which probably, other than a couple of specific scents of the season scents, was my favorite Christmas collection scents he did ever. It was so nice. So the Cozy Spice, it just captures being in the kitchen, baking with your mother or your grandmother, and you have to have a cup of Constant Comment tea to go with it. It's so good. The next one is Clove and Cinnamon, and this is a scent that we have all fall winter, but man, this is so warm and rich. And this year they actually put it in our lineup for scents of the season, and I applaud that because it's one of my favorite spice smells ever from any company. It's in my personal top 10 for life of Scentsy bars. And it is all the warmth and richness of spices and coziness, like by the wood stove, where maybe you would be sitting with your grandma and she'd be knitting, and which I don't have that, I'm just making that memory up. But it just, some of you share some of those memories. Maybe you lived on a farm and you were close to your grandparents. My best friend had that. And just this down-home spiciness, I'm sure it just will take you right back. So then another one, because we are sort of suburban people. We went to the mall so much when I was a teenager. My parents are like professional shoppers. So they would drag my brother and I mean, it was fun, to this amazing mall about an hour from us close to Detroit. This mall, you guys, had the most incredible Christmas displays and decorations. And when you're wandering around the mall, you need one of those cones of the almonds or the pecans that are coated in cinnamon sugar. So Central Park Pralines nails that particular scent. So we would be in the big fancy mall, and they had for many years this collection of life-size marionettes of, I believe it was the Nutcracker, or it was like Renaissance Christmas, and these beautiful, fantastical things were hanging all over the mall in the atriums, and they had huge Christmas trees, and they had the music, and you would have this scent to accompany you into, at that point it was Hudson's, and I never felt any more, I'm going to choke up, any more loved, and growing up just, a little bit sophisticated, you're sort of pretending, and just cherished as I did when my parents would take me down for Christmas. I was not supposed to do this on camera, but my folks always made Christmas into something that was extraordinarily special, and we joke a little bit about all the wonky things that my folks would do in the house. I'll tell you some of those as we go along, but it is just extraordinary when you can share memories with family and the smells can get you there. I really was not going to do this. I haven't even gotten to the top 6. How am I going to get through this whole basket? Anyway, let's move on to another one, which is gingerbread hugs. I do not have a specific memory for this, except I already told you my mom would get out this old Betty Crocker cookbook, and this really smells like gingerbread cookies. This, I think, is the best authentic gingerbread scent that Scentsy's ever made. I don't have it in my club anymore. This is my last bar, but it is rich, and it's got the cookie scent where it's like you snap the cookie, that kind of gingerbread cookie. This is it, and it's excellent. And we would make piles of cookies and wrap all of the things up and give them to the teachers, or now I do that and I give them to my hairdresser. And honestly, for years, the Bath & Body Works ladies saw me so often, because I have always been a scent addict, that I would bring them cookies. They all knew me by name and I knew all their names. And now I'm kind of my own, scent dealer, if you catch my drift. So I don't really bring myself a plate of cookies, but you get the idea. Another one is Saint Nickerdoodle. Now this is one I don't really have a back in childhood or teens or even early 20s memory of this specific scent, but when it came out in a Scents of the Season and I had just newly started melting Scentsy, I fell in love with it. And then it was gone for years. So the fact that we got St. Nickerdoodle back this year, I am just so excited about it. It's rich, it's lovely, it's like an apple strudel, and we do go to Frankenmuth, they do strudel really well there. Oh, it's like an apple strudel covered in powdered sugar, and it's perfection. So please throw this in your club, or if they restock it before Christmas, grab yourself some St. Nickerdoodle. You'll be very happy. To me, that would make an amazing Christmas Eve smell. All right, next is red berry and spruce. And this scent reminds me of the debate between my parents as to what we would get, because we used to cut down real fresh Christmas trees. And I will be getting to that part of the story in the video here. But my mom always liked the really bushy, like Scotch pine type trees. They look like a giant bottle brush. And then my dad liked the white pines with the weepy branches, but they were a pain in the butt to put lights on. And I don't know about you guys in your home, but the lights on the Christmas tree. It was total drama every year with my parents. You'd put out all the strings. Eventually, we bought one of those little, like, burned out light finders. That didn't help. It just made it worse. And the fights and the arguing, and then eventually you'd get it up 6 hours later. And my father's an engineer, so it would just be, oh, but by the time you were done, it was perfection. I don't do perfection on my fake trees anymore. I just do what works, and then I bury them in pretty stuff. But my dad, he gets it right every time, or at least he used to, and they were beautiful trees. So all that to say, red berry and spruce reminds me of when we would have the debates about what type of tree we were going to actually get that year, and then how much work it was going to be to put the lights on. So that's what this particular smell jogs my memories for. It really is raspberry, cranberry, and that pitch sap scent from blue spruce, like specifically spruce trees, which are not real fun to work with, by the way. I warned you in one of my DIY crafting videos, don't use blue spruce. Well, teacher doesn't take advice that she gives others. I whacked up a bunch of blue spruce from the back and stuck it in my pots in the front. Oh, my poor hands. Look at that. It looks like I got in a cat fight, and it's just from the blue spruce. So, at least it smells good. It can't hurt you when you're just sniffing it, right? Okay, next one is going to be Blue Christmas. And again, this would not be my scent memory, but this reminds me of someone who goes to grandma's every year for Christmas, maybe out in the country. I don't know. It just smells like an antique trunk of Christmas memories to me. I know that this has clove and orange and different types of evergreen, and it's a powerful, powerful smell. And if I had had this scent growing up, it would totally bring me back to this thing we called the Christmas box. My folks started out not having all the crazy Christmas paraphernalia that having me brought into their home, because I always have another idea, and they were very good, patient parents. So I would say, well, Mom, your tree looks a little sad, so we should add this, and well, Mom, we should, and that was terrible. I should have just left her alone. We're still recovering from that, oh, Mom, I have this new idea thing. This year, we put a beautiful new tablecloth, like it's been 30 years since we got a new Christmas tablecloth, on her table, and it totally changed the whole scheme. It's still holly, but it's gorgeous. But boy, did it throw her for a loop. Then she had to think about it. Now she's happy. It's been about a week. But anyway, back to the Blue Christmas here. We had this box when Christmas was pretty much just in this one giant dishwasher-sized box. And you would drag that down the stairs, and all the different Christmas smells really very much reminded me of Blue Christmas, but with a hint of 80s plastic. This doesn't have that, but that's what Christmas memories really in that big box were for me. Now, the next one is one of my more pleasant memories of starting to melt wintertime things with Scentsy. This is Whiteout. I don't have a lot of it left. I would love to get this back and bring back my bar. This is a scent that brings me back to when my children were younger. And life was rather stressful with two little girls running around, and this scent would always calm me down. So I don't have like a super nostalgic connection to it, but it's apple, it's a little bit of tree, and it's lots of peppermint. And it is so refreshing. One of the best peppermint scents I've ever smelled. I think it's like a golden delicious apple. Oh, and it just brings me a sense of calm, and so I have a lot of affection for that. Now, the next one is going to be called Brown Sugar Praline. I put this in here to honor my mother-in-law, because, marrying into a very boisterous, loud Italian-Irish family, I came from rather quirky but quiet little Polish, English, and French kind of mix at my house. Like, everything is done politely, everything is done nicely. You go to my in-laws, and it's loud, and you almost need a traffic light at the dinner table to get anything said. Anyway, this is a pretty subdued bar to celebrate my mother-in-law, but she loves all things like bakery. And this brown sugar praline, although she calls it Pauline Praline, she also has a lot of very interesting ways of creating new words. for things. Anyway, she loves her Pauline praline, and she has a couple bars of it now, and it just reminds me of her and her love of baked goods and coffee and Italian pastries. So good. Okay, now we're gonna go to the tree farm. I have two here that are just incredible. So, probably the best story that's gonna happen for this whole video. Every year, the day after Thanksgiving, we would get in the big red van and we would head to, usually it was the same tree farm when I was a kid, but then the quality there went down a little bit and we started hunting every year for a new tree farm. And if you know my parents, we call them Father Abraham trips, who go all over the place looking for this, thing that we cut out in the paper. Do you guys remember that before GPS? When you would actually need to know where you were going, and you'd cut out the address to said tree farm way out in the weeds somewhere so that we would get really good trees because they weren't going to be picked over because not too many people were there. Was your dad like that too? Please tell me. And we would go and we would search and we'd tromp around, and usually we would like to get, I think by the time we got smarter about it, we'd do like a concolor fir or something that was softer. Like I already told you, early on it was either Scotch pine or white pine, and we decided neither of those was that great. So we started going for like firs and balsams and things that were a little more sophisticated, easier to actually decorate, and the things wouldn't all fall off. But one year we went to this tree farm where all the trees were spray painted, and something about that, to give them a deeper color, really irked my dad. So this very snowy spruce, because it's a little bit sweet and it's gorgeous but a little bit fake, reminds me very distinctly of that particular year looking for a tree. And I don't remember whether we actually got that spray painted beautiful white pine tree that made it almost more like the color of a blue spruce, or we were done and we ended up going somewhere else. But sometimes by the time we were back with the tree, and then you had to cut off the end, and then you had to stick it in water overnight, and then you had to put it in the stand, and then you had to light it, and I already told you about how the lights went. Christmas traditions were so much fun. And eventually, after everybody cried, you'd get the tree up, and then you sit down and all would be well again. But you have to do the tree every year. It's just not negotiable. So sometimes very snowy spruce reminds me of those tree farm moments, but the really good ones, like you would go and there would be snow. It was always the day after Thanksgiving, and it would be a perfect movie set, and we did have those years too. I think Mighty Pine is the one to celebrate that. Oh, this is so good, you guys. This is clean, fresh Michigan air where you just cut down the perfect Christmas tree. You're dragging it home with your family, and it's a good year, so nobody's cranky. That did happen once in a while. And you would get in the van, and you would take it home, and things would go pretty smooth. And then the only debate would be, do we do colored or white lights? And of course, the white lights, usually I could talk them into the white lights because that was a little more sophisticated, right? So in some years, my brother would win out, and we'd be putting these screaming, fluorescent bulbs with like the Christmas tree bulbs with faces on them, and then the lights would all be colored, and I'd go sulk in my room because I wanted something, more like this, and it was funny. I'm sure you guys have had those too. You have to have had those moments. And then eventually, just the beauty of going to the tree farm every year. I got married. I had to take my husband to experience this too. And this is where it's kind of a bittersweet year. We went, we did the thing, we got a beautiful, I think it was a fir. We dragged it home. At this point, Greg and I are experiencing like our first Merry Christmas in an apartment. We set up the tree. You do all the things. It's beautiful. I only have a few ornaments, but they're all, sort of in these tones of golds and ambers and whites. That's always been my thing. And it's beautiful. And in the middle of the night, about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, plink, 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 all the needles start pulling off of our beautiful tree. And we're newly married. We don't have 2 cents to rub together. And it starts to get more and more bald, and eventually I'm sweeping up stuff off of the carpet, and Gregory looks at me, and it's one of those sweet, almost like, not exactly an O. Henry moment, what is that beautiful Christmas story about the gift of the Magi? It's almost like that, like we have no money, we know we need a tree, and he looks at me and says, maybe I can get one of the floor samples from Kmart. This is how long ago that was. My dear husband took what little we had left in the bank account that was extra. He dragged himself to Kmart. He bargained for their floor sample of a fake blue spruce, and he brought that home. He saved Christmas for me. And so from then on, we've had fake trees. So the year that I took him to experience a real tree was sort of the death of the real tree thing, but it also has made it a little less stressful. And we don't have quite the meltdowns that I told you about that my whole family had. But long story short, I did take my children, well, we both took our children one time to cut down a tree, and we actually put it outside on our deck and we made it into a bird tree. It was the most wonderful thing. The birds came, we had the peanut butter pine cones, they loved it, they made a giant mess, it was great. And we have all enjoyed that, and I still would love, I've said just recently, I want to be the grandma that drags her grandkids to the real tree farm. So I'm hoping to be able to do that eventually. Just isn't happening in this generation right now, but then I get to make beautiful things like this. So that's the tree farm story. I loved it. It was just the best tradition. It had all the crazy that went with it, but that's the joy of family. You have crazy and you have sweet, and they meld together in a way where hopefully you can just laugh later. Anyway, let's keep moving. So another one is Wassail Wonderland, because oranges are such a big deal in Christmas past. It's very much like a past century nostalgia thing, because oranges didn't used to be something you could just go to the grocery store and get. They would be, trucked across the prairie on a train. You remember the Laura Ingalls Wilder story where the only thing special that they got at the fancy hotel was an orange, and they treated it, to us it would be like a gold bar or a diamond ring. She loved it. And then my mother, her mother, always put tangerines in the toes of their stockings when my mom was growing up. So Wassail Wonderland reminds me of how there'd always be an orange or tangerine at the bottom of my Christmas stocking, along with a handful of nuts, and then the toys were in there too. So this is just one of those scents that you have to have at Christmas time. Another one that's in here is the beautiful hazelnut frosting, and this really has more to do with all the drinks. And in my 20s, we had a coffee beanery here in town, and I started, getting married and getting into an Italian family. Coffee is big. Started understanding why fancy coffee drinks were so awesome. And they had some sort of a caramel one. You guys can leave it in the comments if you remember. A beautiful caramel drink at the Coffee Beanery, which is pretty much now deceased. And this hazelnut frosting just reminds me of that whole atmosphere in that coffee shop, and starting to help me feel more sophisticated and, better versed in a lot of things in life when I married into my husband's side of the family in my early 20s. So then another one I've got in here, this is just these two good Scentsy scents that I don't have a specific memory for, but they're just so good. And after I got introduced to Scentsy, they have always connected my Christmas and into January smell memories. The first one would be Polar Bear Hug. This is incredible. This is like blackberry jam and like sweetness and nostalgia. It reminds me of all those Christmas books that are about like polar bears and Eskimos. It's just gorgeous. And then the other one that goes with that would be Silver Bells. And this one might be a little bit more close to like nostalgia that I can remember, like peppermints. My mother loves peppermints. She would always have the candy canes on the tree. She'd have them out in buckets and bowls and things, and we would get so hyper on too much sugar around Christmas time because she always had it out handy. So Silver Bells really reminds me of some of those things very much. All right, we are down to the countdown part of this melting basket. The first one is Very Merry Cranberry. This is a scent I will not be without at Christmas time. This is a lot like Frosted Cranberry from Bath & Body Works, another thing that I was introduced to in my late teens, early 20s. This scent is all the Christmas happiness. It's not even a Thanksgiving smell for me. It has cedar, and it's got cranberry, and it's sweet, and it's rich, and it's delicious, and it's comforting. This is what I would want to have melting if I was reading storybooks to my kids. We read books and books, and my mother read books and books and books to me as a child. We have baskets filled with Christmas stories, and it is one of the most just cherished traditions in our family. Still, we'll go over and sit there and listen to my mother read Christmas books to us, and everybody's all pretty much grown now. So Very Merry Cranberry reminds me of that. And then the next one, number 5, would be Christmas Cottage. This smell is Christmas. The raspberries and the Valencia oranges and the sweetness and the spice. And this reminds me, we would go to all these amazing holiday open houses. We had this wonderful place in town for years. They were the famous florist in town. They would open their entire place. They would put out a buffet with the fancy meatballs. There was a particular older man that founded the company. He always made his meatballs, and he would personally hand them out to everyone in the community. It was the best. And then you go into their back room, which was just this magical place. I'm going to joke up again. That they always turned into a Christmas wonderland. And that was one of the things that sparked my passion for decorating. Because when you, as a child, walk into this wonderland every year, and it just makes you feel like you're in an otherworldly place, I want to give that to other people when they come into my home. And Christmas Cottage reminds me of all the room sprays and the fancy potpourris and the things that were in that shop. Next would be, this is number 4, Be Merry. Oh man, when they invented this smell, the November scent of the months always knock it out of the park for me with nostalgia. Be Merry is the most perfect Victorian antique Christmas scent Scentsi's ever made. It smells like an old world Santa display, like in my mind. That's how I feel about it. It just makes you feel like you're in Victorian England and you want to go read A Christmas Carol. It's incredible. So next, I've got 3 left. So we're down to my top 3 most nostalgic Scentsy scents of all time. But I do realize that I skipped over 2, so we're just throwing these in as honorable mentions. Cinnamon Bear. Cinnamon Bear is like the red hot candy that you would put on as Rudolph's nose, when you were doing sugar cookies. Oh my goodness. I couldn't not have this in here. This is the most red hot cinnamon, but like in the most wonderful, yummy way. It just makes your home smell like Christmas baking. Oh, it's so good. So that's Cinnamon Bear. And I would be wrong to not mention the December this year scent of the month. This is called Cinnamon Pine Cones. You want to talk about instant nostalgic classic? That's what this is. This is the perfect Christmas scent. Oh, so like Be Merry in a very vintage, old-fashioned, antique way fills the bill. This is like now. This is a perfect, just from my growing up years and beyond, mixture of scents for Christmas. It has fir balsam, it has pine cones, and it has cinnamon. And it's absolutely exquisite. And I am really, really happy that this has been added to our Christmas lineup, and I'm going to be clubbing this. So now, the grand finale, the 3 bars where if there was nothing else, this is all I had left. These would be the ones I would have to melt. Third in line is Homestead Holiday. This is a fantastic Christmas bar. It's in my club. I hope that you've been able to pick it up in random events that they've had over the past few months, because they discontinued it. Oh, you guys. This scent is Christmas in a bar, and to me, it is like an out in the country kind of a Christmas. It has fir needle. I believe there's blood orange in here, and there is this cinnamon stick. It's rich. It's warm. It's absolutely fantastic. Totally Christmas Eve or Christmas Day worthy smell. Nostalgia in a bar. Then November's scent of the month this year. Oh, you guys. The Yankee Candle Company had a tart called Mistletoe. If you've watched my November scent of the month video, this is old news, but this smells almost identical to that. It brought me so far back into my childhood. I was so excited when I opened this up. Oh, you guys, if you want the perfect blend of evergreens, that brings me back to the open houses that I was telling you about with the gentleman and his meatballs and all of the Christmas things and that special room in the back, and going to Bordines and getting your poinsettias and going and tromping through the woods with my best friend down about half an hour away, where there was a point in time where my best friend and I were both broke, and we would forage for all of our evergreens on her parents' property. This bar. Nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. Sweet orange and evergreen is phenomenal. And you know what my favorite Christmas smell of all time from Scentsy is. And the only things that could top it are Winter by Bath & Body Works, which Scentsy has not figured out how to make yet. That is like the most incredible smell. We don't have anything like it from Scentsy. And or my Mother's Holiday Sage by Yankee, which we also have nothing. Those are super nostalgic scents for me that I cannot represent in this box. And then Evergreen by Bath & Body Works. Those, I just don't have a match for them. But when it comes to Scentsy, it reminds me of Holly Berry from Yankee. Cozy Fireside is the best scent, hands down, for me, ever made by Scentsy. It brings me back to Christmas morning, We have a wood stove at my parents' house. We would run down the stairs, my brother and I. There would be bulging stockings, and the way that we celebrated and the way that Santa came at our house, the packages wouldn't even be wrapped. It would be Christmas, where Santa has spent quite a bit of time making a display all in front of our wood stove. And this smell brings me back to that. And it is smoky, and it is gingery, and it is warmth, and it is love. That is Cozy Fireside, and I hope that the rest of you have enjoyed my trip down memory lane, Christmas nostalgia, for our 2022 season and series, where every month we have voted and you guys have come up with something new. This is the last one. I'm going to be thinking about how I want to do 2023. There will be a January video, something to do with melting baskets, but I'm not exactly sure yet how I want to tackle that. So I will be seeing you in January for a new melting basket series with Elizabeth Scenes Incense. Merry Christmas season, everyone. And I cannot in any way have a scent for it. But what Christmas is about is hope. And it is about the Lord, and it is about Jesus. So Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope that you keep the season. You keep it close to your heart, like the Christmas Carol talks about. You eat lots of turkey, bake lots of cookies, have lots of, try the pomander thing if you've never done it before. It's so much fun. Make a wreath. Be jolly. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.